Hello friends, my name is Joshua Marshall, CMC number 721, and today we're going to be talking about gas-freeing hollow structures and how to do so without overpressurizing them and breaking them. So the reason that we were asked to do this is a few years ago, one of our customers asked us how they could go about gas-freeing a hollow structure in order to weld some brackets to it. And so we told them, drill it on opposite ends, blow it with air, and then we'll come and test it. They drilled it, they blew it with air. They blew it with way too much air. They hard piped their compressed air line into said hollow structure and left it unattended on full blast overnight. As a result of that, it turned into a bit of a balloon and caused about $750,000 in damage. And we've learned a few things about that because, of course, at least one person said, well, you did tell us to blow it with air, and they're not wrong. We did tell them to blow it with air, but we didn't assume that they were going to put that sort of pressure inside of the structure. So one of the things we learned is that when we require an air purge on anything while hot work is being conducted on it, and a lot of people do this on pipelines, rudders, and other structures, we will specify that that air purge is to be at a pressure that will not cause damage to the structure. And another thing that we learned is that if you don't have a source of pressure, then you don't have a hazard. And what I mean by that is that if you use low pressure, high velocity air, then you have no issue whatsoever with damaging one of these structures. And you see, at the time that this happened, the collective chemist consciousness was well in good health, because within a couple of days, Mr. John Lee Bell sent me a package. But I didn't know who it was from. I just got a random package in the mail from Amazon, and I opened it up, and it was this. It was this Hurricane air blower, which is meant to replace the compressed air cans that you use for cleaning off, computer keyboards and things of that nature. And what it is just a high-velocity electric fan. Now, he had no idea about what happened. Out of the goodness of his heart, he sent this over to us. And I remember that he and I had a conversation about it, some months back at a seminar. So I called him, and sure enough, that's who it was from. And as a result of having this, we thought, well, what if we use fans in general to gas-free these hollow structures as opposed to air compressors? And what I would like is for Matthew to come over, show you how these things work, what kind of pressure they put out, and how we use them to go about gas-freeing these structures. Matt?
So this is the hurricane blower that Josh was telling you about that John sent. Some of the benefits of this are just how transportable it is. You can put it in your pocket if you've got to go a distance or climb. In certain areas, this is a lot easier to manage than wrangling a compressed air hose. But I want to take just a second to you and show how we've got it hooked up to the manometer here, and we'll see what kind of pressure it puts out. It should be between 1/2 and 3/4 pounds. You can see here, this is our standard blue blower that we have that we'll use to ventilate tanks. One of the companies that we work with actually had rigged this up to where there's a faceplate that we'll put right here where the blower exhausts, and there's different fittings right here for bozo connections. And what they'll do is they'll put this on, hook this up here, install this, and on the other end, as you'll see, we'll test the manometer in a second, but we can put this on the hollow structure to have a continuous flow of air at a low pressure. So some of the benefits of using these blowers are that with the continuous flow, it helps to free up people to do other things. I've often found that when asking someone to blow a hollow structure, I'll ask them to blow it until we get back while we go look at something else there in the vicinity. But oftentimes workers decide that however long they did it is enough, or they'll have to go to the restroom, or they'll do something else, or something else will get their attention and they'll leave. One of the benefits of these blue blowers is you can just set it and forget it. A lot of times we'll just instruct them to do it overnight. Be sure when we come back in the morning that it's fine. Another benefit is that the pressure is negligible. We're going to start the blower here itself. We've got it connected to the manometer, and we'll let you see just how little it is. Josh, you mind turning that blower on, please?
Yes, sir.
And there you go. I saw a little bit of movement, but not much. I don't know if you could make that out yourself, but virtually no pressure. So despite this hurricane blower putting out a pressure less than 3/4 pound, we like to use this to demonstrate that it actually will move a reasonable amount of air through a structure. And we find this to be safe to use in most instances on hollow structures. So now I'd like to show you that even with the negligible amount of pressure that we'll get from the blue fan blower, that we can also move a sufficient amount of air to inflate the bag. Josh, you mind turning on the blower, please?
Yes, sir.
As you can see, it's a little bit slower, but it still gets there.
So hey, thanks a lot, Matt. That's some really good information on how to use fans to gas through these structures instead of compressed air, because if you don't have a source of pressure great enough to damage the structure, you can't damage the structure. Eliminate the hazard. So now we're going to talk about actually using compressed air, but doing that in conjunction with the manometer to make sure that you don't introduce pressure into a hollow structure so great that you damage it. So right now I have an air compressor actually hooked up to the bottom of this structure. It's coming in right here. My ball valve is open, but up here at the top, I've got it teed off going to my manometer, but this valve is also open. Okay, so right now, if you look at the manometer, the amount of pressure that we're reading is negligible. There's almost nothing there. However, if I start to close this valve, you can see how quickly this structure will pressurize. And bear in mind, we're only using a 1.5 CFM pancake compressor. So it took me almost no time at all in order to get about 2 pounds per square inch on this structure. So aside from making sure that we don't overpressurize a structure, we also use manometers sometimes in conjunction with inerting tanks. As marine chemists, we have to verify that whatever space we are inerting is sufficiently intact to hold the inert medium. Sometimes we're working on ships that are decades old, you know, the MARAD Ready Reserve fleet. If they have drawings at all, they're terrible and you can barely read anything, and no one can tell you definitively that you're not going to accidentally put your inert gas into another space via an overflow line or a common vent line. So for us, the only way that we can be 100% certain that that gas can't go anywhere else is we pressure test the tank. If the tank will hold at 1/4 PSI for 30 minutes, then we know that it's going to hold that inert gas as we're putting it in. So I'm just going to show you how that works. Right now I have this valve closed. This hose is still connected to our manometer, and I'm going to slowly open this valve. Now, I have that valve closed again, and we can wait and make sure that our liquid level doesn't drop. And I know it's bouncing around a little bit right now, but we basically got it up to about 3/4 pound. And so if it didn't drop a substantial amount over, say, 15 or 20 minutes, then we can be sure that this space is going to be able to contain our inert medium. Okay, so next thing I'm going to demonstrate is using a manometer in conjunction with gas freeing a hollow structure, and one of the fail-safes that it provides. Now, is not a 100% always certain fail-safe. You could still overpressurize it, but if you overpressurize the structure so much that you lose the liquid in the manometer, then all of a sudden you have a venting point. You ready? Let's see how this works out. Just like that. So when we're talking about pressurizing things, 1 or 2 pounds per square inch doesn't seem like a whole lot. Well, today I've got David Miller, CMC number 663, and beloved patriarch of our chemist family, here to explain the difference between pressure and force.
Our hollow structure we got today is about 4 foot by 4 foot. It has 5,000 square inches per side, and if inflated to 1 psi would have the equivalent of about 2.5 tons of force on each side, not to mention the sides. Now, it's important that you realize what pressure does and how it goes. If we put 10 pounds on this, that would be the equivalent to 50,000 pounds of force, or 25 tons. And if you just opened up an air compressor to 100 pounds, it would be catastrophic to this structure, which we're going to demonstrate later on. Now, when you're putting air in these, it's important to do the old mass balance thing, that if you put air in, air has to come out. Every time I've been involved with something that got overinflated or pooched or blown up, it was because the person that set up the air test or the air purge did not understand that you had to have air out equals air in, and thus you had an accumulation of the air, and that led to the catastrophic failure of the structure. Just another number, if we had a 20 foot by 30 foot bulkhead, which would be common all over the place, and put 1 pound on it, that would be the equivalent to 86,000 pounds of force on it, or 432 tons of force just on that 1 pound of pressure. So you can see what kind of force you're dealing with, and do everything you can to make sure that you don't have an accumulation of the air that you're using to purge or blow out the structure.
Hey Patrick.
Yeah.
Anybody think about vacuum?
Vacuum.
Alright, so since we're talking about damaging structures by overpressurizing them while we're trying to gas free them, I thought it would be worth talking about overpressurizing them from the outside by incorrectly using vacuums. Sometimes people have asked me, hey, we've got this keg, it's got some residual liquid in it, can we just hook up one of our vacuum tankers and try to suck out that residual liquid? And it's really not a good idea, because if you evacuate the hollow structure, be it a skeg, a built steel, a boom, whatever it happens to be, then that structure will experience the force of atmospheric pressure. So here in Charleston, South Carolina, about 14.7 psi. Today we wanted to demonstrate for you what happens when you do evacuate a hollow structure, and I've got everybody's favorite tank ninja, Mr. Elliot Lutz over here, who's going to do a little demonstration for us to show you what happens. So, Elliot?
Hi Josh, how are you?
I'm doing well, sir. How are you?
I'm excellent.
That is fantastic. Would you like to explain what we're going to be doing today?
Yeah, so what we have here is a drum, and then right there is the tanker truck. The tanker truck is going to pull 28 inches of mercury. Then once the truck is on, I'm going to signal her to open the valve, and I'll put the end of the suction hose on, thus creating all the atmospheric pressure to go away. You'll see something truly amazing. Go ahead, Eric. Turn on the truck, please.
Big guy. As far as you can. So granted, this isn't half-inch steel plate or even quarter-inch steel plate, but I think you get the idea. Okay, so we've talked about pressurizing hollow structures. overpressurizing hollow structures, what kind of hazard that presents, and some ways to mitigate that hazard. So, I think we should overpressurize it and see what happens. But we're going to do it safely. And I have to say, this is probably not the best idea for anyone to try to replicate, but we are in the absolute middle of nowhere. We're at least 150 yards from the nearest structure, and we've got some safety precautions that we have taken into account. So, one, we have this thing tethered between chains and really, really strong straps. Two, our only source of power is a generator, which is, can you look over there? It's about 100 yards that way. And the only way that we are going to be able to turn on our compressor, which is right over here, is to turn on that generator, which is now off. So we have to get at least 100 yards away, turn on the generator, which will then fire up the compressor, and we will start putting pressure into this hollow structure. Now, the compressor, while it's only a very, very slow flow rate, will get up to 150 pounds per square inch. If I said that we knew what was going to happen, I would be lying. We hypothesize that it's at least going to turn into a balloon. But what we don't know is if it is going to violently rupture in a physical explosion. And that's what we're concerned about. So not only are we going to be about 100 yards away, we're going to be on the other side of a berm. The cameras that are going to be filming this are going to be set up prior to us ever turning on the generator. And we will have this hose run to a pressure gauge that will film simultaneously so that you can see at what pressure the structure starts to deform, and hopefully at what pressure it critically fails and explodes. Okay, so before we blow this thing up, I just wanted to say thank you to Denton Shipyards Incorporated in North Charleston, South Carolina. We've had a great relationship with them for decades. They've always been willing to let us use their facility for training. And today, we are using a structure that they donated to us. They used this originally to teach their own people how to pressure test tanks. And we reached out to them about the film that we were doing and told them kind of what we needed. And they said, well, we have just the thing. And they showed us this, and I said, well, no, we're gonna try to destroy it. And they said, well, that's okay. We'll make another one. So we're not really sure what happened because we put about 90 PSI on this thing and it did deform. Patrick, can you come over here? Whereas before this was all flat plate, now it's ballooned out. But whereas we thought that this was just a box with no internal framing, of course we didn't build it ourselves. After we shut everything down, and we tried to relieve the pressure through some holes right here, we still had 80 pounds per square inch on the pressure gauge that was attached here, and on the hose that was attached down here. So we're not really sure how this thing's constructed. We know that some amount of pressure made it into the full body of the structure because we definitely deformed it. But it wasn't as violent as we thought it was going to be. That being said, that is the conundrum with hollow structures. No one has x-ray vision, and so you never know how they're constructed. And that's why, you know, if we were going to gas-free a structure like this, we would put a hole right here in this corner, and then we would put a hole diagonally opposite on the opposite side in order to make sure that we had airflow through the entire structure, to make sure that, you know, we had the entire thing gas-free. But yeah, we're really not sure what's going on with this one. Despite our best efforts, we were not able to blow up our steel box. We really wanted to show what a catastrophic failure looked like. That said, we were able to distort it. We were able to make the structure balloon, and by any measure, in a vessel repair situation, that would be extremely expensive on any mass boom bilge keel, skeg, what have you. But we had a backup plan. So we're going to overpressurize the steel drum and see what happens. It was a lot more dramatic than we thought. We got phone calls from folks about 3/4 of a mile away asking what happened. We also made it onto the neighborhood Facebook page with folks well over a mile away wondering what the explosion was. But, you know, I think that we illustrated what can happen if you overpressurize a hollow structure. Not only can you damage structure, if anyone was anywhere near that drum when it went, they could have been hurt or much worse. We at MET-Chem really appreciate you watching our video. If you think that it has any value for outreach or training, feel free to use it. We had a great time making it. Thanks.
Pressure